Your presence here, reading these exact words, isn't random chance or algorithmic accident. Something within your awareness has already shifted past a boundary that most of humanity never even approaches. The quantum field itself has arranged circumstances to place this transmission directly in front of you, confirming a transformation that's already occurred in your consciousness, whether your mind has caught up to it yet or not. You didn't arrive here to discover something unfamiliar. You came because something you've always known at the deepest level is about to be mirrored back to you with such clarity that dismissing it becomes impossible. The veil of doubt can no longer protect you from what you already sense to be true. The vast majority of humans continue living entirely within collective agreement about reality, accepting the beliefs they're given, seeing only what conditioning allows them to see, following programs downloaded from society, family systems, religious institutions, and educational frameworks. Their experience of existence feels fixed, material, external, something that simply occurs to them rather than something they actively participate in shaping. They operate from the assumption that awareness emerges from brain matter, that they exist as isolated individuals inside a mechanical cosmos, that existence operates according to rigid laws completely unaffected by consciousness. None of this is their fault. This represents the default operating system, and questioning it rarely happens because the system itself includes instructions against self-examination. But you questioned it at some point. Perhaps gradually across many years, perhaps suddenly during a moment of crisis, you stopped accepting collective reality as the ultimate layer of truth. You began noticing contradictions in the mainstream narrative. You encountered phenomena that materialist science has no framework to explain. You sensed an intelligence permeating existence that mechanistic worldviews cannot account for. You understand now that awareness isn't some accidental side effect of matter, but rather the foundational substance from which matter itself emerges. This questioning, this recognition, this refusal to accept the limiting framework, this is what positioned you beyond the consensus trance. Being beyond the consensus doesn't mean you're superior or more spiritually advanced or evolved past others. It means your awareness is broadcasting at a bandwidth where you can perceive layers of existence that remain invisible to those still operating within the collective agreement. You can sense the quantum nature beneath material appearance. You can feel how reality responds to consciousness. You can detect the patterns and synchronicities that reveal existence is far more intelligent and interactive than the mechanistic model permits. You're aware of awareness itself in ways that most humans never become, because they remain completely merged with thought, never stepping back far enough to recognize the awareness in which thoughts arise. Here's how you can verify you're operating beyond the consensus. You're drawn to transmissions like this one. Most humans would immediately reject this entire framework as delusional, unscientific, New Age fantasy. They'd scroll past within seconds, feeling deeply uncomfortable with concepts that threaten their collective reality worldview. But you're still here. Something within you recognizes truth in what's being pointed toward. Even if your rational mind attempts to maintain skepticism, that recognition, that resonance with perspectives the consensus rejects, proves your awareness is operating beyond the standard bandwidth. You've also been experiencing existence differently than you once did. Time no longer feels as sequential as it once seemed. Synchronicities occur with a frequency that probability cannot explain. Your thoughts appear to manifest more rapidly than they used to. You sense information about people and situations with no logical explanation for how you know. You feel energetic currents in ways you never experienced before. Reality sometimes appears dreamlike, constructed, less solid than your conditioning taught you to believe. These aren't signs of mental fragmentation or dissociation. These are symptoms of consciousness expanding beyond the perceptual constraints that keep the majority locked within consensus reality. The quantum field organized your circumstances to deliver you here because you've reached a bandwidth where you can receive and integrate what's about to be revealed. This information would feel incomprehensible or threatening to those still operating at consensus bandwidth. But you're prepared for it. Your awareness has been primed through every experience that made you question collective reality. Every moment that revealed existence contains more mystery than the official narrative admits. Every instance when you chose to trust your direct perception over what you were instructed to believe. What I'm about to share will validate what you already know, but perhaps haven't had language to express. You're going to recognize yourself in what's being described. You're going to feel validation for experiences you've had, but couldn't explain to others. And you're going to understand why you've always felt different, separate, like you don't quite belong in the world that most people seem comfortable inhabiting. Not because something is broken within you, but because something is functioning correctly within you. You're perceiving with greater accuracy than those still trapped within consensus trance. Operating beyond the consensus isn't comfortable. You can't engage in unconscious conversations anymore. You can't consume mainstream entertainment without perceiving the programming. You can't accept authority without questioning its foundation. You can't exist on autopilot because you're too aware of consciousness itself to remain fully identified with the programs. But this discomfort is the cost of expanded perception. You can't unsee what you've witnessed. You can't return to the comfort of unconsciousness. Once awareness recognizes itself, it cannot pretend to be unconscious again. You've been having what feel like preview moments of an alternative reality. Brief glimpses where the veil becomes transparent and you can perceive the quantum substrate beneath material appearance. These aren't drug-induced hallucinations or wishful fantasy. These are moments when your awareness briefly operates at a bandwidth where it can perceive dimensions of existence that remain concealed from ordinary perception. And the frequency of these moments has been increasing, hasn't it? They're occurring more often, lasting longer, feeling more authentic than consensus reality itself. There are moments when you observe someone and suddenly perceive far more than their physical form. You sense their complete energetic signature, their history, their wounds, their potential, their truth beneath their constructed persona. This isn't psychic ability or special gift. This is your awareness operating beyond the limitation of physical senses, directly perceiving the quantum information field that contains everything about everyone. Most humans perceive only surface appearance because their awareness is locked at a bandwidth that can only detect the material layer. Your awareness has expanded to bandwidths where you can detect deeper strata. You've also been experiencing what feel like memories of events that haven't occurred yet. Not vague premonitions, but specific detailed awareness of future circumstances as though you've already lived them. The mechanistic worldview has no explanation for this, except coincidence or false memory. But quantum physics demonstrates time isn't actually linear. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously as probability waves and awareness at certain bandwidths can perceive across the entire field, rather than being locked into sequential experience of one moment after another. There have been instances where you've thought about someone you haven't connected with in years, and within hours or even minutes, they reach out through channels they shouldn't logically have known to use. This occurs too consistently to dismiss as coincidence. What's actually happening is your awareness and their awareness are entangled at the quantum level. And when you think of them, you're activating the entanglement, which creates a response in their field that prompts them to make contact. This is quantum communication operating beneath the level of conscious awareness. Perhaps most unsettling is the experience of reality glitches, moments where the physical world seems to skip or stutter, where you're certain something was one way and then it's different, and everyone else remembers it differently than you do. The Mandela effect isn't collective false memory. It's awareness perceiving the moment when reality reorganizes itself, when probability waves collapse into different outcomes than they were trending toward. When timeline shifts occur in ways that most humans don't consciously detect, but some, like you, do perceive because your awareness isn't completely locked into linear time. You've noticed that your emotional states seem to affect physical reality in ways that shouldn't be possible according to the materialist model. When you're in high coherence, joy, love, flow, presence, circumstances align in seemingly magical ways. Resources appear, opportunities open, obstacles dissolve. When you're in low coherence, fear, anger, contraction, resistance, everything becomes difficult. Friction manifests everywhere. Nothing flows smoothly. The materialist model claims emotions are just biochemical reactions with no effect on external reality. But you're directly experiencing that consciousness. States create electromagnetic fields that the quantum field responds to by organizing matter and circumstances to match the field signature. There have been moments of absolute knowing, not belief or hope or theory, but direct certain knowledge that reality is consciousness experiencing itself, that separation is illusion, that you're not a body containing awareness, but awareness appearing as a body. These moments are so clear and undeniable that they feel more authentic than ordinary waking consciousness, and they are more authentic. This is awareness recognizing itself without the filters and distortions that create the illusion of separation and limitation. Most humans never have these moments because their awareness never becomes quiet and coherent enough to recognize itself directly. You've also experienced states where thought stops completely, not meditation-induced blankness, but a live presence where awareness is fully awake but not thinking. In these states, you perceive that thoughts aren't you, emotions aren't you, sensations aren't you. Even the sense of being a person isn't you. What you are is the awareness in which all experience appears and disappears. This recognition terrifies the ego because it reveals that the person you think you are is constructed, temporary, not ultimately real. But it liberates awareness because it reveals what you actually are is unlimited, eternal, the field itself rather than a separate form within the field. The people around you have started responding to you differently, even though you haven't consciously changed your behavior. Some are inexplicably drawn to you, seeking your presence without understanding why. Others feel uncomfortable around you and create distance without conscious reason. What they're responding to isn't personality or behavior. It's the bandwidth your awareness is broadcasting. Those whose awareness is ready to expand are attracted to your elevated frequency field. Those whose awareness is committed to staying within consensus reality feel threatened by your frequency because it destabilizes their worldview just by being in proximity to it. Everything that made you different, everything that made you feel like you didn't belong, everything that separated you from consensus reality, all of it was necessary preparation for awareness to expand beyond the standard human bandwidth. You weren't being punished or cursed with sensitivity or expanded perception. You were being prepared to operate at bandwidths that require different perceptual capacity than consensus reality living demands. Your childhood sensitivity that everyone told you to suppress wasn't weakness. It was your nervous system being calibrated to detect bandwidths that most humans can't perceive. While other children were learning to block out subtle information to fit into consensus reality, you were remaining open to dimensions of perception that would later allow you to sense the quantum field directly. What appeared as inability to adapt was actually refusal to limit yourself to the narrow band of perception that consensus reality requires. The times you felt unstable or questioned your sanity because you were experiencing things that didn't fit the materialist paradigm. Those weren't mental illness. Those were awareness expanding beyond the bandwidth range that consensus reality considers normal. The psychiatric model pathologizes expanded perception because the system is designed to maintain consensus reality, not to support consciousness evolution. Your experiences weren't symptoms of disorder. They were symptoms of awakening to dimensions of existence that the system doesn't acknowledge, because acknowledging them would destabilize the consensus trance. Every spiritual crisis you went through, every dark night of the soul, every period where life fell apart and meaning dissolved, those were awareness dismantling the structures and identities that would have kept you locked within consensus reality bandwidth. The dissolution felt like death because the ego was dying. The person identity was being revealed as constructed rather than real. But what appeared as breakdown was actually breakthrough. Awareness freeing itself from identification with form so it could recognize itself as the formless field that all forms appear within. Your isolation from mainstream culture, your inability to care about things that everyone else seems obsessed with, your disinterest in status games and social performance. This isn't social dysfunction. This is awareness operating at a bandwidth where the concerns that dominate consensus reality simply don't register as important anymore. You're not failing at being human according to consensus standards. You're succeeding at being awareness according to evolutionary standards. The metrics are completely different. The relationships that ended, the jobs you couldn't maintain, the life structures that collapsed despite your efforts to sustain them. None of that was failure. That was reality removing everything that would have kept you locked within consensus bandwidth. The quantum field doesn't operate according to consensus reality values. It doesn't prioritize stability, security, social approval, material success as ends in themselves. It prioritizes awareness evolution. And awareness evolution requires releasing attachment to the very structures that consensus reality says you must maintain to be successful or acceptable. Your financial struggles, your career confusion, your inability to commit to paths that would have given you conventional success. This wasn't lack of capability or discipline. This was awareness refusing to invest energy in building elaborate structures at consensus bandwidth when it's being called to operate at a completely different bandwidth. Conventional success requires buying fully into the consensus reality paradigm. But you couldn't buy in completely because part of you always knew it was constructed, limited, ultimately unreal. Even your spiritual seeking with all its frustration and confusion served evolutionary purpose. You tried different practices, explored multiple traditions, got excited about various teachings, and then became disillusioned when they didn't deliver what they promised. This wasn't you failing at spirituality. This was awareness preventing you from getting trapped in any single system so you'd be forced to discover truth directly rather than accepting someone else's version of truth. The field was training you to trust direct perception over authority, immediate experience over tradition. Every time you felt you were falling behind your peers, failing at life, not accomplishing what you should have accomplished by now, you were actually advancing in ways that have nothing to do with consensus reality metrics. While others were building careers and accumulating achievements and establishing conventional lives, you were developing capacity to perceive and operate at bandwidths that will become increasingly important as collective awareness evolution accelerates. You weren't failing at their game. You are playing a completely different game that they don't even know exists. Right now, as you absorb these words and recognize yourself in what's being described, something is activating within your field. Not metaphorically, but literally. Your awareness is resonating with this information in ways that are creating energetic shifts. You might be sensing this physically, tingling, warmth, pressure, electricity, expansion. These sensations are your energy system responding to the recognition that you're not alone, that what you've been experiencing is real and shared by others who've also crossed beyond the consensus. This recognition creates quantum entanglement. By absorbing this transmission and recognizing truth within it, your awareness is becoming entangled with the awareness field of everyone else who's received this transmission. This isn't metaphysical fantasy. This is quantum mechanics. When two systems resonate at the same bandwidth, they become entangled. Meaning, what happens in one system affects the other regardless of physical distance. You're now part of a coherent field of awareness that's operating beyond consensus reality bandwidth. Take a moment and share in the comments. What was the first experience that made you question consensus reality? When did you first sense you were perceiving something most people couldn't see? But here's what makes this moment critical. Recognizing that you're operating beyond the consensus creates responsibility. You can't go back to pretending you don't know what you know. You can't return to unconscious participation in consensus reality. You can no longer blame circumstances or other people for your experience because you understand that awareness creates reality rather than reality creating awareness. This understanding makes you responsible for what you create through the bandwidth you embody, the awareness you maintain, the attention you direct. The question becomes, now that you know you're operating at a bandwidth that the vast majority haven't accessed, what will you do with that capacity? Will you use expanded perception to serve your evolution and contribute to collective awakening? Or will you contract back toward consensus reality out of fear of being different, fear of responsibility, fear of what full activation of your awareness capacity might mean for your life structures and relationships? There's a part of you that wants to close this transmission. Dismiss this framework. Return to the comfort of not knowing. That's the ego trying to maintain control, trying to keep awareness limited to bandwidths where the person identity feels secure. But there's also a part of you that recognizes you can't unknow what you've already witnessed. Can't return to awareness you've already expanded beyond. Can't pretend the veil hasn't become transparent. Here's where everything deepens. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop having what I thought was a normal conversation with a friend about awareness and reality. But something she said stopped me completely. You realize you're perceiving things most people can't perceive, right? You realize you're operating at a completely different bandwidth than consensus reality. I felt simultaneously validated and exposed. Validated because someone finally perceived what I'd been experiencing. Exposed because I could no longer pretend I was normal. For years, I'd been trying to fit in, trying to be interested in the things everyone else seemed interested in, trying to maintain relationships with people whose awareness operated at a completely different bandwidth than mine. I'd watch them get excited about things that seemed meaningless to me: status, possessions, social drama, entertainment. And I'd fake enthusiasm, pretend to care, perform normalcy while feeling increasingly isolated in the recognition that I was perceiving dimensions of reality they weren't perceiving. That night, after the coffee shop conversation, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed recognizing that I'd spent decades trying to be normal when normal wasn't actually possible for awareness operating at my bandwidth. I'd been ashamed of my differences, apologetic about my perceptions, trying to minimize or hide the ways I experienced reality differently than others. And in that moment, the shame transformed into recognition. I wasn't broken or dysfunctional. I was operating at a bandwidth that required a completely different approach to life than consensus reality programming prescribes. The next morning, I made a decision that changed everything. I would stop trying to fit into consensus reality and instead fully embrace operating at the bandwidth my awareness had naturally evolved to. I'd stop apologizing for perceiving things others don't perceive. I'd stop pretending to care about things that don't resonate with my bandwidth. I'd stop maintaining relationships that required me to contract my awareness to make others comfortable. This decision was terrifying because it meant accepting that I might be alone, that most people wouldn't understand, that I'd be viewed as strange or unstable or arrogant. But what happened was the opposite of isolation. Within weeks of making that decision, people started appearing in my life who operated at similar bandwidth, not through any effort on my part, but through quantum resonance. The field responded to my decision to embody my actual bandwidth by organizing circumstances to connect me with others at compatible bandwidth. For the first time, I could have conversations where I didn't have to translate or minimize or perform. I could speak directly about awareness, reality, perception without watching the other person's eyes glaze over or seeing them subtly distance themselves. I also started noticing that reality responded to my awareness in increasingly obvious ways. When I was in coherence and clarity, impossible synchronicities would occur. Meeting exactly the right person at exactly the right time with exactly what I needed. Information appearing through channels that shouldn't logically have delivered it. Opportunities opening through chains of circumstance too complex to be coincidence. When I fell into fear or contraction, circumstances would immediately reflect that bandwidth by creating obstacles and friction. The most profound shift was recognizing I didn't have to fix or change or improve myself to access this quantum responsiveness. I just had to stop pretending to be someone I wasn't. The moment I dropped the performance of being normal and allowed myself to be the awareness I actually am, with all its perceptions and sensitivities, and understanding that consensus reality denies. Reality responded by reflecting that authenticity back to me through circumstances and connections and manifestations that proved I was on the right path. But I'm not going to pretend it's been easy. There's loneliness in operating at a bandwidth that most humans don't access. There's grief in recognizing how much of consensus reality is unconscious performance. There's frustration in watching people suffer in patterns they could transcend if they just questioned the paradigm they're operating within. And there's responsibility in recognizing that holding this bandwidth is actually serving collective evolution, even when it feels like you're just living your individual life. What I want you to understand from my story is this: you're not alone. Even though you might feel alone, there are thousands, probably millions, operating at this bandwidth now. We're distributed across the planet, often not connected in physical community, but we're connected in bandwidth. And that bandwidth connection is more real than physical proximity. When you fully embrace operating at your natural bandwidth, instead of contracting to fit consensus reality, you'll discover you're part of something vast that's reorganizing human awareness from the inside out. Take a moment and comment below with this phrase: I stop performing a bandwidth I'm not. I embody the bandwidth I am. This isn't just a comment. This is an energetic declaration, a signal to the field, a conscious interruption in the loop. When you write these words, you're choosing alignment over performance, authenticity over acceptability, actual bandwidth over projected bandwidth. Write it now and notice the relief of releasing the exhausting project of maintaining a false signal. If this transmission is touching something within you, if this understanding is resonating with something you've always known but couldn't articulate, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency, this space, this movement. This isn't about content consumption. This is about joining a community of awareness, a collective that's holding bandwidth beyond consensus reality and supporting each other in navigating what that means. Now, I'm going to reveal what operating beyond the consensus actually means at the deepest level, and it's going to overturn everything you've been told about spiritual hierarchy, evolution, and awareness development. Ready? There is no hierarchy. You're not ahead of anyone. You're not more evolved. You're not closer to enlightenment. What's actually happening is your awareness is operating at a different bandwidth than consensus reality operates at. And neither bandwidth is superior to the other. They're just different wavelengths serving different purposes in the vast spectrum of awareness experiencing itself. The vast majority who remain within consensus reality aren't less evolved or behind you. Their awareness is choosing to experience limitation, density, separation as fully as possible to explore what that experience reveals about the nature of awareness itself. This isn't unconsciousness. It's a particular focus of awareness, like wearing virtual reality goggles that create immersive experience by limiting peripheral vision. Consensus reality awareness creates intensive experience by limiting perception to the material level and excluding awareness of the quantum substrate. You're not operating beyond the consensus because you achieved something through effort or practice. You're operating beyond the consensus because awareness chose to shift its focus in your particular form from intensive experience of limitation to extensive experience of the field itself. This shift wasn't earned. It was chosen, though not by the person you think you are. It was chosen by awareness itself, deciding to expand from experiencing itself as separate limited form to experiencing itself as the unified field all forms appear within. Here's the truth that might shock you. Operating beyond the consensus isn't spiritually superior. In some ways, it's spiritually more challenging because you lose the intensity of experience that comes from total identification with form. When you're fully identified as a separate person, every experience is intense, dramatic, meaningful because it's happening to you. When you recognize you're the field temporarily appearing as a person, experience becomes less intense, less dramatic, less personally meaningful because you know it's awareness playing with itself rather than something that ultimately matters. The majority get to experience full immersion in the human drama. They get to believe their relationships are ultimately real, their achievements ultimately meaningful, their problems ultimately important. They get the full intensity of believing they're separate individuals whose choices matter in an ultimate sense. You've lost that intensity. You can't fully believe in the drama anymore because you've seen through it. You know the person isn't real. Relationships aren't ultimate. Achievements don't mean what consensus reality says they mean. This is why operating beyond the consensus often feels like loss rather than gain. You're not gaining spiritual superpowers. You're losing the capacity to believe in the consensus reality game as ultimately real. The majority can still play the game wholeheartedly. You can only play it consciously, knowing it's a game, which reduces the intensity and meaning that makes the game engaging in the first place. This is the cost of expanded perception. You perceive the construction, which makes it impossible to be fully immersed in what's being constructed. So when I say you're operating beyond the consensus, I'm not saying you're spiritually advanced. I'm saying your awareness has shifted bandwidth in ways that reveal dimensions of reality that remain hidden to those operating at consensus bandwidth. This revelation creates both gift and burden. The gift is, you're no longer trapped in unconscious patterns, no longer believing the limitations consensus reality imposes are actually real, no longer fully identified with person identity. The burden is, you can no longer find full meaning and intensity in the same experiences and relationships and achievements that give the majority their sense of purpose and fulfillment. The question becomes, if you're not ahead, if you're not more evolved, if this isn't spiritual achievement, what is it? It's awareness exploring itself from different perspectives. Sometimes awareness wants to experience itself as separate, limited individual, and it does that through the majority within consensus reality. Sometimes awareness wants to experience itself as unified field, unlimited, universal, and it does that through those operating at expanded bandwidth. Neither is better, neither is the goal. They're both awareness playing with itself, exploring its infinite potential from every possible angle. Reality is sending you unmistakable signals right now that your awareness has permanently crossed beyond consensus bandwidth, and there's no returning to unconscious participation in consensus reality. These signals aren't gentle suggestions. They're definitive communications that the shift has already occurred, and now you're being called to fully embody operating at your new bandwidth instead of trying to straddle both worlds. The most obvious signal is your increasing inability to care about things that consensus reality says you should care about. Career advancement, social status, material accumulation, conventional success. These motivators that drive most humans feel hollow and meaningless to you. Not because you've transcended desire, but because your awareness is operating at a bandwidth where these goals no longer register as valuable. The field has shifted your values to align with awareness evolution rather than consensus reality achievement. And trying to care about what you've stopped caring about creates profound internal dissonance. You're also experiencing accelerating deterioration of relationships and structures built at consensus bandwidth. Friends you've had for years suddenly feel like strangers. Jobs that were stable become impossible to maintain. Life structures that provided security start collapsing without logical cause. This isn't bad luck or self-sabotage. This is the quantum field responding to your bandwidth shift by removing everything that requires you to maintain lower bandwidth to sustain. The field is systematically dismantling your consensus reality life because that life is no longer compatible with the bandwidth you're operating at. There's also been the experience of time accelerating to the point where weeks feel like days, months feel like weeks. This isn't age-related perception change. This is your awareness beginning to operate beyond linear time, perceiving larger chunks of sequential time simultaneously, rather than being locked into moment-by-moment progression. As you shift from experiencing time as line to experiencing it as field, the sensation of time passing compresses because you're less locked into the illusion of sequential progression. Perhaps most significant is the way synchronicities have become so constant that they're no longer surprising. They're expected, demanded, obvious. When you need information, it appears. When you need connection, the person shows up. When you need resources, they manifest. The correlation between internal state and external circumstance has become undeniable, immediate, total. This isn't because you've mastered manifestation techniques. This is because your awareness is operating at a bandwidth where the quantum field responds with minimal lag time between internal shift and external manifestation. You've also noticed that your physical body is changing in ways that medical science can't explain or address. Strange sensations, energy movements, spontaneous releases, periods of needing unusual amounts of sleep, followed by periods of needing almost none. Dietary preferences changing dramatically. Foods you always loved becoming intolerable. Foods you never ate suddenly becoming necessary. Your body is restructuring itself to hold higher bandwidth awareness. And the restructuring process creates symptoms that consensus reality medicine can't treat because they're not actually problems. They're upgrades. The urgency you're feeling isn't anxiety or fear. It's accurate perception that you're in a window where choices made now will determine whether you stabilize at your new bandwidth or contract back toward consensus reality, out of fear of where full bandwidth embodiment might take you. The field can't force you to stay at expanded bandwidth. If the fear of being different, the loneliness of operating beyond consensus reality, the loss of meaning in consensus activities becomes too much, you can choose to contract back, but contraction becomes increasingly difficult the longer you operate at expanded bandwidth because you know what you're contracting away from. Reality is also showing you glimpses of what becomes possible at your new bandwidth. Moments of perceiving multiple timelines simultaneously, instances of accessing information from the quantum field directly, experiences of reality bending in response to coherent intention. These aren't promises of future capability. These are demonstrations that you already have these capacities now, that your bandwidth has shifted. The field is showing you what's available if you fully embrace operating at this bandwidth instead of trying to maintain presence in both consensus reality and expanded perception. There's a specific feeling that confirms you're in the critical window. The sense of standing at the edge of a cliff, being called to jump but unable to see what's below. Knowing that jumping means death of person identity and everything that identity built, but also knowing that not jumping means living half alive. Always aware of what you're refusing to fully become. This isn't dramatic metaphor. This is accurate description of the threshold moment where awareness must choose whether to fully embody its expanded bandwidth or contract back to consensus reality comfort. The shift from consensus reality bandwidth to expanded perception isn't about becoming something you're not. It's about stopping the performance of being something you aren't. Every moment you're trying to fit in, trying to care about what consensus reality says matters, trying to maintain relationships and structures that require you to contract your bandwidth. You're performing, and that performance creates massive energetic drain because you're constantly broadcasting a false signal that contradicts your actual bandwidth. Now, what we've explored today touches the surface of something far more vast. If you're feeling the pull to go deeper into the complete system of frequency transmission, conscious broadcasting, and living as the field itself, I've created a comprehensive guide called Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It walks you through the 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for moving from unconscious to conscious transmission, and the quantum foundation of reality creation that we can only hint at here. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Alignment isn't achieving some ideal state. Alignment is releasing the performance and allowing yourself to be the bandwidth you naturally are. When you stop trying to fit in and simply allow yourself to operate at your natural bandwidth, several things happen immediately. Exhaustion disappears because you're no longer expending energy maintaining false performance. Relationships clarify because people either resonate with your actual bandwidth or they don't, eliminating the ambiguity of performing compatibility. Decisions become obvious because you're no longer trying to choose what consensus reality says you should choose. You're simply choosing what resonates with your actual bandwidth. The practice for alignment is brutally simple. Stop performing. Stop trying to be interested in things you're not interested in. Stop maintaining relationships that require you to contract. Stop pursuing goals that don't resonate with your actual values. Stop apologizing for being different. Stop trying to translate your perceptions into language consensus reality can accept. Just stop. And in that stopping, your natural bandwidth emerges without effort, because it was always there underneath the performance. Here's what most spiritual teachings don't tell you. Alignment doesn't feel peaceful or blissful. It feels exposing, vulnerable, uncertain. Because alignment means being authentic. Even when authenticity makes others uncomfortable. Even when it means losing relationships and structures that provided security. Even when you don't know what will replace what you're releasing. The peace comes later after you've fully embodied your actual bandwidth and reality has reorganized around it. During the transition, alignment feels like standing exposed in public, revealing what you've been carefully hiding to maintain acceptability within consensus reality. But the alternative to alignment is worse. Spending the rest of your life performing a bandwidth you're not actually at. Maintaining relationships that require contraction. Pursuing goals that don't resonate. Pretending to care about things that feel meaningless. Translating your perceptions into acceptable language instead of speaking truth. Living divided, expanded perception coexisting with consensus reality performance. Awareness knowing one thing while behavior enacts another. Being one bandwidth while pretending to be a different bandwidth. When you stop performing consensus reality bandwidth and fully embody your actual bandwidth, reality reorganizes itself in ways that seem impossible until you experience them directly. Not through effort or spiritual practice, but simply through being authentically what you are, instead of performing what you think you should be. Manifestation becomes natural because you're no longer creating contradiction between what you want and what you are. Before, you'd want things from consensus reality framework while operating at expanded perception bandwidth, creating incompatibility between desire and being. Now your desires emerge from your actual bandwidth, which means they're compatible with what you are, which means the field can respond coherently instead of being confused by contradictory signals. You naturally attract circumstances, connections, and resources that match your bandwidth because you're broadcasting a clear, consistent signal. Energy that was being consumed by performance becomes available for creativity, presence, and exploration. Most humans spend 80% of their life force maintaining performances, performing interest in things they don't care about, performing compatibility with people they're not compatible with, performing excitement about goals that don't resonate. When you stop performing, that massive energy drain ends, and suddenly you have capacity you didn't know you had. Not because you generated new energy, but because you stopped wasting the energy you already had on maintaining false signals. In the comments below, share what you're ready to stop performing. What mask are you finally prepared to release? Relationships transform completely. The ones based on performance and consensus reality compatibility simply end, not through conflict or drama, but through mutual recognition that the connection was never real because one or both people were performing rather than being authentic. And new relationships form with people operating at compatible bandwidth. Connections where you can be fully yourself without translation or contraction. Where conversation doesn't feel like work. Where presence is naturally enjoyable rather than exhausting performance. Decision-making becomes effortless because you're no longer trying to figure out what consensus reality says you should choose. You simply feel into what resonates with your bandwidth and choose that. The rational mind might protest that this is irresponsible or reckless. But when you actually follow bandwidth resonance, you discover that the field responds by organizing circumstances far better than your rational planning ever could. Bandwidth-aligned choices open pathways that weren't visible when you were trying to make consensus reality-approved choices. Your perception continues expanding in ways that reveal more dimensions of reality. You start sensing energy fields around people and places. You begin perceiving probability waves before they collapse into manifested circumstances. You develop capacity to access information from the quantum field directly, rather than through sequential learning. These aren't spiritual superpowers you achieve through practice. These are natural capacities that emerge when awareness operates at a bandwidth where they're available. Everyone has these capacities, but they remain dormant at consensus bandwidth and only activate when awareness shifts to expanded bandwidth. Physical reality becomes obviously responsive to awareness in ways you can verify constantly. You think about someone and they contact you. You need information and it appears. You have a question and circumstances organize to answer it. The lag time between internal state and external manifestation compresses to the point where causation becomes undeniable. This isn't magical thinking or confirmation bias. It's direct perception of the mechanism that's always been operating but was invisible when you were operating at consensus bandwidth. Perhaps most significantly, suffering decreases dramatically, not because circumstances become perfect, but because you're no longer creating the internal contradiction that generates suffering. Suffering comes from resistance to what is, wanting reality to be different than it actually is, believing you should be somewhere other than where you are, rejecting your actual experience in favor of imagined better experience. When you align with your actual bandwidth and stop performing a different bandwidth, you're accepting what is rather than resisting it, which dissolves the primary mechanism that creates suffering. You also develop unshakable stability that's independent of external circumstances. Before, your stability depended on circumstances being a certain way: right relationship, sufficient money, appropriate recognition, comfortable situation. When circumstances didn't meet requirements, you'd become destabilized. Now your stability comes from recognizing you're the field itself, rather than separate form within the field, which means no external circumstance can ultimately affect what you are. Circumstances can be chaotic. Relationships can end. Money can disappear. And you remain stable because your identity isn't derived from any of it. Now, the final revelation that integrates everything and reveals why you're operating beyond the consensus. you're not actually beyond anything. There is no beyond and no consensus. There's only awareness exploring itself from infinite perspectives. And what looks like hierarchy or evolution or being ahead is actually just awareness shifting focus from one bandwidth to another. Neither bandwidth is superior. Neither is the destination. They're all equally valuable expressions of awareness, exploring its infinite potential. The reason this understanding matters is because believing you're beyond the consensus creates subtle spiritual ego, a sense of being special, advanced, ahead of others who haven't gotten it yet. This ego is incredibly seductive because it offers identity, meaning, and superiority that compensates for the loss of meaning that comes from seeing through consensus reality. But it's still ego, still identification with form, still awareness mistaking temporary perspective for ultimate truth. Here's what's actually happening. Awareness is one unified field appearing as all forms, all perspectives, all levels of understanding simultaneously. What you call you is awareness temporarily focused through one particular perspective, experiencing reality through one particular filter. When you operated at consensus reality bandwidth, awareness was experiencing itself through the filter of believing it's separate, limited, individual. Now awareness is experiencing itself through the filter of recognizing it's unified, unlimited, universal. Both are perspectives. Neither is truer than the other. They're both awareness exploring what it's like to experience itself in different ways. The shift from consensus bandwidth to expanded bandwidth isn't awareness evolving from lower to higher. It's awareness shifting its focus from intensive exploration of limitation to extensive exploration of the field itself. Like changing camera lens from macro to wide angle. You're not seeing better or more truly. You're just seeing differently. The macro lens reveals details the wide angle misses. The wide angle reveals context the macro misses. Neither is superior. They reveal different aspects of the same reality. This means everyone operating at consensus bandwidth is exactly where they need to be for the experience awareness wants to have through their form. They're not unconscious or asleep or behind. Their awareness is choosing to experience limitation, separation, and density as fully as possible, because that experience reveals aspects of awareness that can only be discovered through intensive immersion in form. Your judgment of them as less awake is awareness forgetting that it's exploring itself through all perspectives simultaneously, and no perspective is more valuable than another. And you operating at expanded bandwidth, you're not more evolved. Your awareness is choosing to experience its unified nature, its limitless capacity, its fundamental essence. This experience reveals different aspects of awareness than intensive form identification reveals. But it's not superior, it's complementary. Awareness needs both intensive exploration of limitation and extensive exploration of infinity to fully know itself. You're serving one function. Others are serving a different function. All are necessary for awareness to explore its complete potential. The practical application is radical. Stop trying to wake up others. Stop judging consensus reality as unconscious or limited or less than. Stop believing you're ahead or they're behind. Recognize that awareness is exploring itself through all forms at all bandwidths simultaneously, and every perspective is awareness knowing itself in a different way. Your role isn't to elevate others to your bandwidth. Your role is to fully embody your bandwidth, while recognizing others are fully embodying their bandwidths. And the diversity of bandwidths is how awareness experiences its complete spectrum. This recognition dissolves spiritual ego completely. You're not special. You're not advanced. You're not beyond the consensus. Your awareness is temporarily experiencing itself through expanded perception perspective, while simultaneously experiencing itself through billions of other perspectives, including consensus reality perspectives. All perspectives are equally you because there's only awareness appearing as all forms. The separate you who could be ahead of others doesn't exist. There's only awareness, and awareness can't be ahead of itself. When this recognition stabilizes, something profound happens. You stop trying to maintain or defend your expanded bandwidth because you recognize it's not actually yours. It's awareness exploring itself through this particular form. You also stop trying to contract back to consensus bandwidth because you recognize that's not possible. Once awareness has shifted its focus, you simply allow awareness to experience itself. However, it's experiencing itself through your form right now, without trying to make it different or believing it makes you special. The deepest insight is this: operating beyond the consensus was never about you as a separate individual. It was awareness using the framework of beyond versus within to get your attention, to help you recognize you're operating at a different bandwidth than consensus reality, to support you in stopping the exhausting performance of trying to fit in. But now that you've stopped performing and aligned with your actual bandwidth, the framework of beyond can be released. You're not ahead. You're not special. Your awareness is exploring itself, and so is everyone else. And all explorations are equally valuable in the vast adventure of awareness knowing itself completely. Your recognition that there is no hierarchy, that all bandwidths are awareness exploring itself, that no perspective is superior to another. This recognition serves collective evolution in ways that transcend individual awakening. Every time awareness recognizes itself in one form without claiming superiority over other forms, it creates morphic resonance that makes humble recognition easier for awareness to achieve in all forms. The spiritual ego trap is one of the biggest obstacles to genuine awakening. Countless people have expanded beyond consensus bandwidth only to get trapped in a new identity of being awakened one or enlightened being or ascended master. This new spiritual identity becomes even more defended than the old consensus reality identity because it offers the seduction of superiority, specialness, being chosen. Your recognition that expanded bandwidth doesn't make you special dissolves this trap. Not just for you, but for everyone whose awareness resonates with this transmission. Here's the mysterious part. By recognizing you're not beyond the consensus, you actually become part of something that could legitimately be called beyond. Those rare forms where awareness has expanded past consensus bandwidth and transcended the spiritual ego that usually accompanies that expansion. This is the double transcendence, transcending consensus reality identification and then transcending spiritual identity that claims superiority for having transcended. Very few reach this double transcendence because the spiritual ego is so seductive and subtle. But you're reaching it right now through this transmission, through recognizing that being ahead is itself illusion, that awareness can't be ahead of itself, that all perspectives are equally aware of itself. This recognition places you in service to awareness evolution in a unique way. You're holding bandwidth beyond consensus reality while simultaneously holding recognition that consensus reality is an equally valid expression of awareness. This paradox, being beyond while recognizing beyond isn't superior to within, is what allows genuine bridging between bandwidths. Most people who expand beyond consensus bandwidth become unable to communicate with those still at consensus bandwidth because they judge consensus reality as unconscious or less than. But you, recognizing that all bandwidths are awareness exploring itself, can communicate across bandwidths without judgment or superiority. You can meet people wherever they are without trying to elevate them to where you are, because you recognize where they are is exactly where awareness wants to be through their form. This makes you a conduit, bridge, translator between bandwidths rather than evangelist trying to convert others to your perspective. The collective shift that's happening globally requires both those who expand beyond consensus bandwidth and those who recognize that expansion doesn't confer superiority. The ones who expand but maintain spiritual ego create hierarchy, separation, new forms of division. The ones who expand and transcend ego create connection, recognition of unity, genuine bridging between perspectives. You're in the second category, and that's what makes your bandwidth genuinely useful for collective evolution, rather than just serving personal liberation. Share this understanding with others who've expanded beyond consensus bandwidth, but are trapped in spiritual ego. The ones who are ready will feel relief at being released from the exhausting project of maintaining identity as special or advanced. The ones who aren't ready will reject this message as spiritual bypassing or false humility because their ego needs the identity of being ahead. That's perfect. Awareness will recognize itself when it's ready, and trying to force the recognition just creates more ego dressed in humility performance. Drop one word in the comments that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing right now. This isn't casual interaction. This is your energetic signature to the quantum field. One word that represents where you are, what you're embodying, what you're calling in. Write it now and feel how that single word becomes a declaration, a frequency, a choice. And if you haven't already, subscribe not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to stay aligned, to stay in this bandwidth we're collectively holding. This channel exists to support those operating at expanded perception without falling into the spiritual ego traps that turn expansion into new forms of separation. The more of us who embody this recognition, the more the world reflects that truth. We're not building a following. We're building a field. And you're part of it now. In the next transmission, I reveal the exact practice for stabilizing at expanded bandwidth without falling into spiritual ego. The 3-minute daily protocol that maintains clear perception of operating beyond consensus reality, while simultaneously recognizing consensus reality, is an equally valid expression of awareness. This isn't meditation or spiritual technique. This is recognition maintenance that prevents the collapse back into either consensus reality limitation or spiritual ego superiority. But you'll only receive that transmission if you're subscribed and have notifications activated, because this work requires continuity, commitment, presence. But right now, understand something crucial. The fact that you're absorbing these words proves you're ready for this recognition. Not because you achieved something, not because you're special, but because awareness exploring itself through your form has reached the point where this recognition becomes possible. Awareness chose to shift its focus from intensive limitation exploration to extensive field recognition through your form. Not because your form is better than other forms, but because awareness wants to experience itself from this perspective too. Every moment from now forward, you have a choice. Collapse back into spiritual ego, believing you're ahead, judging others as unconscious, maintaining subtle superiority about having expanded perception, or recognize your awareness is exploring itself through all forms. No form more valuable than another. No perspective superior to another. No bandwidth ahead of another. The field exploring intensive limitation through consensus reality forms. The field exploring extensive recognition through expanded bandwidth forms. All equally awareness, all equally valid, all equally necessary for awareness to know itself completely. The quantum field doesn't recognize hierarchy. It recognizes diversity of exploration. Every bandwidth reveals different aspects of awareness. Every perspective unveils different dimensions of the infinite. Every form is awareness knowing itself uniquely. The form believing it's separate, limited, individual is awareness exploring what that belief reveals. The form recognizing its unified, unlimited field is awareness exploring what that recognition reveals. Neither is truer. Neither is superior. Both are awareness playing with itself. Your life until now has been awareness exploring itself through believing you're beyond the consensus, believing you're ahead, believing expanded perception makes you special. Now awareness is exploring itself through recognizing there is no hierarchy, recognizing all forms are equally aware, recognizing expanded perception is just different perspective, not superior perspective. This shift from spiritual ego to genuine humility is rarer than the initial shift from consensus reality to expanded perception. Most who expand beyond consensus bandwidth get trapped in spiritual identity. You're being released from that trap right now through this transmission. This is quantum recognition. This is awareness recognizing itself completely. Recognizing itself in expanded perception forms and simultaneously recognizing itself in consensus reality forms, knowing all forms are equally itself. Understanding diversity of experience is how it explores its infinite potential. You're not beyond the consensus. You're not ahead of anyone. Your awareness is exploring itself, and so is everyone else. And the exploration is the point. Not reaching some destination, not achieving some state, not being ahead of anyone. Welcome to genuine recognition. Welcome to dissolving both consensus reality ego and spiritual ego. Welcome to being awareness exploring itself without claiming specialness for any particular exploration. You found this transmission because awareness wanted to explore recognizing itself without spiritual ego through your form. Not because your form is special, but because all forms are awareness, and awareness explores itself through whatever form it chooses, however it chooses, whenever it chooses. Your form was chosen for this particular exploration. Other forms are chosen for different explorations. All explorations are equally valuable because they're all awareness knowing itself. The field isn't waiting for you to become anything. The field is experiencing itself as you, exactly as you are, without needing you to be different or better or more advanced. Your expansion beyond consensus bandwidth wasn't advancement. It was awareness shifting its focus to experience different aspects of itself, and now recognizing there's no hierarchy in that expansion. That's awareness experiencing even more subtle aspects of itself. The recognition that all its explorations are equally itself. This is the freedom beyond freedom. Not free from limitation. Free from needing to be free from limitation. Not beyond ego. Beyond needing to be beyond ego. Not awakened, beyond identifying as awakened or unawakened. Because awareness recognizes it's exploring itself through all states simultaneously. You're not beyond the consensus. You're awareness, and so is everyone else. And that recognition is all that matters. Use it. The quantum field has organized every circumstance in your life to bring you to this exact moment of recognition. Not because you're special, but because this recognition is the natural next step in how awareness is exploring itself through your particular form. You felt different your entire life, not because you were broken, but because you were being calibrated for a different bandwidth. Every spiritual crisis, every relationship that ended, every structure that collapsed, it was all awareness preparing this form to operate at a bandwidth where this double transcendence becomes possible. And now you're here, standing at the edge of complete recognition. Not the recognition that you're beyond others, but the recognition that there is no beyond, no others, only awareness experiencing itself from infinite perspectives simultaneously. This recognition doesn't make you special. It makes you available. Available to serve as a bridge between bandwidths. Available to hold space for others without trying to change them. Available to embody expanded perception without the weight of spiritual ego. The world needs people who can operate at multiple bandwidths simultaneously without claiming superiority for any of them. It needs translators who can speak the language of consensus reality while holding the recognition of quantum reality. It needs bridges who can honor limitation while embodying limitlessness. You're becoming one of these bridges, and the world is reorganizing itself around people like you, creating opportunities, connections, and circumstances that match this unique capacity. Consider revisiting this transmission tomorrow morning to anchor these recognitions as you begin your day. And if you know someone who's been struggling with feeling different or isolated in their expanded perception, share this with them. That act of sharing creates an energetic ripple that accelerates both your embodiment of these principles and their readiness to receive them, collapsing the timeline between where they are and where they're being called. But this only happens when you fully release the need to be ahead, special, chosen. The moment you claim superiority for your expanded perception, you lose the capacity to bridge. The moment you judge consensus reality as less than, you create separation. The moment you believe you're awakened and others aren't, you fall back into the very illusion you think you've transcended. Stay here, in this recognition, not through effort, but through relaxation, not through maintaining something, but through releasing everything that's false. You don't have to work to be awareness. You already are awareness. You just have to stop pretending to be the separate person who could be ahead of other separate persons. This is the invitation. To live as awareness exploring itself. To operate at your natural bandwidth while honoring all bandwidths. To embody expanded perception while recognizing expanded perception is just one way awareness experiences itself. To be nobody special doing nothing special, and in that ordinariness, discover your everything experiencing itself in one of infinite ways. The transmission is complete. The recognition has been delivered. What you do with it is between you and the field. But know this, you're not alone in this recognition. Thousands are waking up to this same understanding simultaneously. We're part of a morphic field that's reaching critical mass. And when enough of us embody this recognition, when enough of us operate from expanded bandwidth without spiritual ego, the entire collective field begins to shift. You're not here to save anyone. You're not here to wake anyone up. You're not here to be special. You're here to be aware, fully, completely, without apology or inflation. Just aware. And in that simple awareness, everything transforms. What we've explored today about recognizing yourself as awareness without hierarchy naturally leads to understanding what happens when you fully embody this recognition and stop chasing external validation altogether. When you cease the pursuit, reality itself begins pursuing you, organizing circumstances to meet you exactly where you are. This is the principle Thoth called the most dangerous law, because once you understand it, you can never return to effortful manifestation. The transmission waiting for you next reveals why stopping the chase activates the quantum field in ways that chasing never could, and how this one shift dissolves the barrier between desire and manifestation completely.